Misfit.camp. Holy smokes, we're getting fancy. If you head to misfit.camp and you...
That's it? That's all I type in?
Yes. Misfit.camp.
Hunter's
If you
doing
head
it right.
there
I don't believe it.
and...
I don't believe it.
I fucking doubt it.
Camp.misfit, he said, right?
He's going to mute you so I can finish this promo. Misfit.camp, March 12th and 13th. Make sure that you get that plane ticket or bus ticket or get in your car early enough to join us on March 11th so that you can do that workout. Misfit Camp is back.
So excited.
Yeah,
Can't
we're
wait.
pumped to see
Seriously,
everybody. It's
can't
going to be great. Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into another episode of the Misfit Podcast. If you are new to the show or new to the Misfit programming and you have not heard one of these special edition episodes, this is the Phase 4 podcast where we take you on a deep dive into how we program, why we program the way that we do, and how you can navigate the entire phase to improve. We've got a few things that we want to cover before we get into that. The good thing about all of the stuff that we're covering today, though, is that it has a similar theme. We're going to be talking about a lot of things that make a whole lot of sense for quarterfinals prep camp, and then I think that's going to segue us nice into what Phase 4 is all about. But before we do that, I have 2 cups of coffee inside of 1 cup of coffee, and I think it's
Jacked.
I think it's time to get the grip tester out.
Damn.
So
I thought I broke that.
You had
Can
a
we get rid
pretty
of that?
good mark, though, from last
Right?
time, though.
He did cheat.
Had the top 2. He did. Well, his second one was better than his first,
yeah.
allegedly.
Oh, see that elbow?
A little elbow.
That's
Little
0
elbow?
still.
Oh, I bet.
148.6.
Oh, I have to try.
Good luck, sir.
48.6. Fuck,
I'm bringing
gonna have
chalk
to
in here
try.
next week.
I'm
Hold on.
feeling
Sick of fucking getting the
Hold on.
140s.
If you're listening,
Definitely
I'm taking
chalk.
a sip of coffee that has a powdered coffee inside of it.
There's powdered coffee in your 2 cups of coffee and 1 cup of coffee.
Kids taking
That's a perfect
PEDs.
description.
Good. Taking PEDs.
Kids taking PEDs to do the grip test.
I never signed anything that said I wasn't allowed to do that.
Not to your knowledge.
I totally thought you were just gonna grab the.
Well, that didn't feel good. Oh, 150.4.
Oh, barely squeaked
that did
out the
not feel
second
good. Hey,
place.
an inch or a mile. Never had your car.
Hey, Dominic Toretto. Oh, that didn't feel great. That's still won though. 163.
163? Yeah, that's not bad. How many toes to bar did you just do? Did you do the math?
It was only 111. But
Oh,
I
It's
okay.
a significant amount.
Well, I did 75 in the first one,
Yeah, I didn't
and then I did
definitely
30. Then I did 36.
It
in
has
the second one.
finally reached the point in Maine where I, depending on how soft I'm feeling, can't do my walking outside anymore, or if I don't have the gear for it. The biggest issue right now is the pants. I don't have any pants that are even remotely windproof. Like, not even close.
Oh yeah,
And I don't know.
I actually have that same issue.
I don't really know what to
dude?
like because I don't even really need gloves or a hat. A jacket's good to go. But if the wind's whipping in Maine,
Cotton.
right now, the wind chill and the humidity knocks down the feeling by like 10 to 20 degrees every day. So even if you see that it's sick, it's 40 out. No, it's not. It says it's 22.
It's 4.
Winds 12 miles an hour and the humidity's 65%, which means the ocean is slicing through your heart.
It's terrible.
But I'm not going to complain about the winter this year. I just want that out there.
You're just making a statement. You're making a statement. That was
the
one.
one.
That was a
the one
statement.
complaint.
It's a
I mean,
statement,
it's
not a
been pretty
complaint.
mild overall.
People are listening and I want to give them anecdotes. I have to give them the play-by-play, but I'm not complaining.
I'm not complaining.
Anyways, so I was walking on the air runner and watching, and it was the typical Misfit climb the ladder skill progression, 2, 4, 6, 8, 1, 2, 3, whatever. And Hunter was doing quite a few more sets than everyone else.
Fuck.
And I was just thinking to myself, this is one of those ones where, like, if you have capacity, you have the ability to bury yourself
I did.
later in the week. What is it for you? Is it like actual abs or is it hip flexors?
Yeah, my midline was.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, when you do
Yeah.
get the delayed onset,
Oh,
like,
the delayed onset.
is it like more like up near your rib cage or is it all the way down in your loins?
It's plums.
Feel it in my plums.
Honestly, I won't get super sore from them.
Okay.
Like I don't get really sore from toes to bar.
Are you tougher than the sun?
I don't know about you, but I usually
think-
get like a tight back
I
is what
guess,
happens. Is it
yeah,
ratchets
like
down
my
my hip
psoas
flexors.
just like and then doing the sandbag clean deficit handstand push-up afterward.
What I like to do is take a month off and then do 111.
My vertebrae.
Let me tell you how you feel after that.
That's enough recovery in between sets. I think that's part of the PAP training.
Yeah. Recovery is king.
My abs were pretty sore after like the toes to bar tests that we did. So I think it is like actual abs.
You prepared for this last week. We did a workout that was like back-to-back days of 100 plus
God
toes to
damn
bar.
it. Every time it's like, all right, what workout are we going to do on camera? All right, let's make sure that we do
Same thing
600
tomorrow.
of each movement the day before without thinking about it.
Oops.
Check.
It's funny because it's your fault every time.
It is always
makes
my
it
fault.
funnier.
It's exclusively my fault too.
I love
You'll
it.
be all right.
I still get irate.
All right, enough joshing around. We're going to talk
Who's
about
Josh?
camp here for a little bit. For anybody that has been living under a rock recently, Misfit Athletics Quarterfinals Prep Camp is March 12th and 13th.
Thank fucking Christ.
We would love for you to show up on March 11th and do 22.3 with the Misfit Gym Portland crew.
Hell yeah.
If you do sign up for camp, we're going to give you instructions on how to do that. You're going to have your own coach assigned to you in your little group. We're going to go over points of performance. We're going to talk in this episode about how the Open is now our preseason, which is so important. We get practice reps, meaningful practice reps before we go into quarterfinals. So what is quarterfinals prep camp? If you have been to a Misfit Athletics camp before, you can expect a similar structure in terms of lecture series, movement efficiency, getting to actually work out and throw down with your fellow Misfits and all that good stuff. But what makes quarterfinals prep camp different? We find that when you are trying to get ready for an online competition, even the best athletes, this concept of noisiness within the idea of I need to be strong, I need to be skilled, I need to be strategic, I need to have that athlete IQ. What's my lifestyle like? There's so many of these factors that are out there, and I really feel like they're almost like those, like the visuals, those multiple like thought bubbles, and they're all going on at once for an athlete. And that noise gets turned up in a moment where it needs to be turned all the way down, and athletes need to go into themselves and execute on what they're doing. So our job within this camp is to distill that noise down into concepts where it's like, okay, this is how I work on this. This is how I'm going to think about this. This is what my mindset looks like. What is an athlete IQ? How can I go into this with knowledge? And then we're going to put those things into practice right after we talk about them. And there's something really powerful about coming together as a group and realizing that, yes, there are all of these pieces that need to go together, but we're going to bring them all back down into one thing and say, hey, we're going to go out there and we're going to execute, and here's how you accomplish it.
One of the other benefits to the camp itself, and especially ahead of something like a quarterfinals, where there's going to be like kind of not two groups of people, but like, for the sake of argument, you've got folks who are, hey, quarterfinals is my Super Bowl. Like, I know that, I'm not going to semifinals, but I want to see how well I stack up. And then we've got the other side of the coin, which is there's a chance I'm trying to get to semifinals, or it's like, okay, I have to hammer quarterfinals to get to semifinals and get the, maybe the location, the venue for my semifinal that I want. Either way, the benefit here is that when you come to the camp, you get to, at that point in the season, like we always kind of talk about it, like the hay is in the barn, whatever metaphor you want to use, but you're not going to get significantly fitter between, quarterfinals prep camp and the quarterfinals themselves. But what you are going to do is be able to understand basically how to maximize the strengths that you have developed over the last, year of training. The advantage to coaching a pretty wide range of affiliate level athletes, all the way from, your most scaled affiliate athlete to literal CrossFit Games athlete, is that we get to see this really massive spectrum, and there are so many different paths athletes take when going from quote average to competitor, whatever that route looks like. It's a little bit different for everybody, and the benefit to being in that environment is we've seen enough of those athletes to have a pretty good idea of where you're at and what that trajectory might look like. And then it becomes like, okay, so John is at this point, these are the things that I can give to him to specifically make his performance in quarterfinals better. It's not necessarily going to be like, hey, do these things and you're going to semifinals. It's what have you done? What are you bringing us to the quarterfinals prep camp, and then how can we maximize that to be as, you know, efficient for you as possible.
Yeah, and the magical thing about that room at training camp is every single person in the building, unless you are the fittest person in the building, which at one of our camps is challenging, has someone to chase in camp. There's a realistic person that you can say, what are they doing that I'm not? I'm going to talk to them. They're beating me by a minute. They're lifting 10 pounds more than me, whatever it is. Maybe it's just movement efficiency and we get to fix that thing in the moment. You know, we had a lot of people out there with whatever you want to call it, a giant axe at home, and they're going to get into a fight and they bring a pen with them and the other person's got an axe, right? If you come to camp, you will go into quarterfinals swinging that axe. You'll be ready to go.
To me, another thing that's really important here is like you said, I agree with you. You know, the hay is in the barn. This is kind of where your physical capacity might be and might make a dramatic change in this camp. But what you will change in this camp is you can change your mindset. For a lot of athletes is this separating factor between, hey, I'm on this bubble and I've never burst it, to I'm going to burst this bubble and make that next leap. And this is something we've seen year after year at many of these camps, these athletes who are what we'd call on the fringe of taking that next step up to the next category of whatever athlete they're going to, you know, hope to be. They make that leap because they take the time to break things down and take our advice and say, hey, you know what, maybe this weekend I don't care about racing everybody in every single workout. I'm going to try to, you know, glean something from each lecture, glean something from each skill session and say, all right, how does this make me a better athlete? And then, you know, they pull us aside and have conversations on the side. That's another thing I think is sort of underrated about this camp is the ability to connect with someone. And, you know, instead of just sitting a DM into the Instagram channel, to having a conversation that takes 5, 10, 15 minutes that says, you know, I've been trying to do these 3 things and these 3 things aren't going the way I want. Do you have any advice on how to address these three things that are specific to me? And that to me is one of the most valuable parts of this camp is the ability to connect with one of the Misfit coaches and say, hey, can we spend a few minutes kind of talking about my personal like journey? And is there anything that maybe you think of doing incorrect that I could fix to make that next leap? And to me, that's one of the coolest things is someone who's, we've never heard their name before, come to one of our camps, and then next year you see them, or next season you see them on the stage, you know, competing and being like, you know what, congratulations. And we meet them again down the road and they're like, you know what, it was that conversation we had at camp that made that possible for me to believe in myself that I could make these changes and take that next leap forward.
Yeah. And before the podcast started, we had a little meeting and talked about, you know, how do we like break it down and synthesize who this camp is for. And we came up with 6 separate groups of people, I think, which is a really good sign if someone out there is nervous. So we have athletes that are attempting to qualify for quarterfinals this year. We have athletes that are qualifying for quarterfinals. We have athletes that are using quarterfinals to get to semifinals. Coaches is a really big one that I don't think we address enough because we are so immersed in that I think we think everybody is thinking in that same way that we are. Students of the game, right? We have a lot of people that we know that are at our affiliate that don't care as much about the competitive season, that love the nitty-gritty details about how all of this works. They just have more of that analytical brain. And then last but not least, one that Sher brought up that might be the most important is we get so many questions about how do these little friend groups start within Misfit Athletics? How do I get into one of these group chats where people are comparing scores and talking shit and having a good time? And that community is what has separated us, I believe, from the start. And if you come to one of these camps, it can be literally life-changing in terms of who your group of people are. You sort of have that moment where you finally have found, you know, a community of like-minded people, which can be really challenging in young adulthood when you're transitioning from, you know, your high school friends to your college friends to your work friends, whatever it is. It can be hard to find that group of people that are really interested in the same things as you are. And when you come to training camp and leave, it's gotten to the point where we realize that people come to camp to see each other and not us.
True.
Which
Absolutely
originally,
true.
I don't want to say it was a hard pill to swallow, but like you get it in your head, like, oh, they're coming here for us. And then you realize the next camp, they're getting an Airbnb together. They're going out to dinner. They're not like, you know, the first camp, it's like, oh, do people like hang out? Is there dinner or whatever? They're like, can we get out of here so we can all go like, you know, grab a margarita and a taco or something like that. So camp is for all of those people. And every camp that we've ever had has had a CrossFit Games athlete and a beginner in it. And we've never gotten negative feedback from anyone across that spectrum. I think mainly because we give a shit about all the people that
Yeah,
show up.
something we pride ourselves in is, you know, the being able to deliver an effective scaling option, or effective modification for the absolute brand new person to all the way to the CrossFit Games. That there's value for anyone at any journey, as long as you're willing to, you know, maybe set your ego aside and want to learn something. To me, I routinely enjoy working with people who are brand new to this stuff. And, you know, I had a friend drag me to this. I don't even know what this thing is all about. And my affiliate owner said, come do this camp, you know, when we were on the road and whatnot. And then leaving that and being, you know, huge Misfit fans, and then wanting to maybe make that next step. Maybe they didn't have their why at the gym. It was, you know, my doctor said I got to lose some weight. And all of a sudden they found something, some passionate part of the sport of CrossFit, or the camaraderie that is created in the sport of CrossFit, that now makes them have a deeper tie into our sport. And to me, that's like life-changing, because there are still people from, I think, our 817 camp down in like Fort Worth years ago. You know, I still get routinely tagged by one of the ladies that came to one of these camps, and, you know, she was doing handstand holds for handstand push-ups and thinking that like this camp wasn't for her. And at the end, she was like, this was amazing. I learned so much this weekend. And yeah, I still have a long ways to go before I'm doing all the movements that you were teaching this weekend. But to me, that shows me that there's hope there. There's something in this sport that is for me. And yeah, I might be here now, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be here permanently, because I really took to heart what you guys all said. And I want to put that into practice and see how much fitter I can get. So to me, that's one of the coolest things about this camp, is to see even the beginners really get a lot from it.
Final thought on camp, just to play devil's advocate to some of the stuff you guys said before. If you show up at camp and you're one of those people that would qualify for semifinals, if it wasn't for your deadlift or your clean and jerk or your muscle ups, your chest to bar or whatever, we can help you and have helped people to the point that they do qualify within that actual season.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Now, if you skipped all your bitch work and you never go hard, what you guys are saying is absolutely true. If the hay is not in the barn, if the hay is in the field, waiting for you to go get it and put it in the barn, that what you guys are saying is absolutely true. But there's something about that hands-on action with an athlete. We always say a day with an athlete is worth like, in person, is worth like 3 months of remote coaching.
Agree.
You can really sort of have those cues. And like, I was going to throw out some examples, but I would ramble on for way too long. There's so many common faults within movements or within mindsets or whatever that we're going to tackle within Quarterfinals prep camp. So misfitathletics.com, Ted, click on misfit.camp. Holy smokes, we're getting fancy. If you head to misfit.camp and you...
That's it? That's all I type in?
Yes. Misfit.camp.
Hunter's
if you
doing it
head
right now. I
there,
don't believe it.
and
I don't believe it.
I fucking doubt it.
Camp.misfit, he said, right?
he's going to mute you so I can finish this promo. Misfit.camp, March 12th and 13th. Make sure that you get that plane ticket or bus ticket or get in your car early enough to join us on March 11th so that you can do that workout. Misfit Camp is back.
So excited.
Yeah,
Can't
we're
wait.
pumped to see
Seriously,
everybody.
can't
It's
wait.
going to be great. All right. Phase 4.
The page took like 3 or 4 seconds to load.
Got it.
Whole 3 seconds?
Thank you.
You've been erased.
Trolling his own company. Okay. Phase 4, huh? This is always very interesting for us because we are currently writing Comp Block 2, and Phase 4 is right now, and we get to go
at the wrong
back.
programming sheet.
He
for like
was
5 minutes.
He was in the meeting. He was
before.
on the wrong sheet.
Fuck.
Was
the right movement?
silent for a very long time, and we didn't know why. And there you go. He couldn't. He couldn't.
Why does the sheet say August 18th?
So there's a lot. This is one of our more important phase podcasts because things are a lot different right now. Things are a lot different than they were last year. Changes are being made within our own personal philosophy and what we're putting on the blog. But then in terms of what the actual season is and what it means now has changed. So phase 4 normally would be considered what we would call open prep.
Yep.
Quarterfinals prep begins now. Like the open, again, is our preseason. We get to go into the open. We get to practice. We've always asked you guys to do that, but how many people were getting out their cameras and you're going to transition this way and you're going to those are the types of things that if you get used to them, they have less of an impact on you when it's actually time to get after it. So you are forced in the open to act like it's the old open. And what we noticed last year is even though the open didn't matter for a lot of athletes, in terms of their actual scores. It mattered a lot in working on some of that stuff because we had some really high level athletes freak out about their scores or about this or that. So it still carries that weight. So if you are from the open of old, I think it still carries that sort of like level of anxiety and like, this is the thing that gets people started and ready for quarterfinals.
Yeah, to me, that's like, it speaks to a little bit to an element of like athlete pride. Like they want to make sure that like they don't put up a score that they're maybe not happy of or not proud of. So to me, you think of it like the NFL preseason, like you might not have the weight of like your future being determined by these, 3 games in the preseason or these 3 events in the open this year, but it's still a great time to check in with everything and, make it obvious that, hey, I know how to set my camera up. I know how to transition. I've practiced all these things. And here's a great opportunity with not a lot of weight against it. If you, do mess up, we see athletes we know probably going to punch their ticket at the CrossFit Games doing the first 3 open workouts multiple times because they think they can learn something from a second attempt. And, I always tell an athlete, even if you don't think, that their strategy was a bad strategy, there's still value in practicing again because you might pick something up that might not pertain to that particular workout, but might inform you on how to execute a future workout, which again is super valuable because you are going into the part of your season where it does start to carry weight. So why not put good practice reps in now so that it carries over when you are against the clock and when things do matter?
It's kind of a double-edged sword because it's like, you go in, the open doesn't matter quite as much. And then, like you said, maybe you get a score and you're just like, fuck, that's not what I was expecting.
The open matters all of a sudden.
Every week against Hunter, yes.
It might not matter for your positioning as much on the leaderboard, given, how assuming that you're somebody who's pretty confident they'll move on to quarterfinals. But if you don't take it seriously, if you don't focus on those little things, and you do have a bad open workout, what does that do for your ego? What does that do for your mental state going into quarterfinals where the workouts matter significantly
Builds
more?
the noise.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're treating the open as just kind of like a throwaway, I would say that's the wrong way to approach it. It's not the exact same as it has been in previous years where it matters quite as much, for lack of a better term, but there's still a lot to be like, we've talked about it before where we're saying like, hey, when we used to program, whether it was like open retest workouts or open simulation workouts on Friday, we'd say, hey, pull out a camera, get a judge, have those things in place. And I don't know how many people actually did that. And then, now you're being forced to. Basically the open is going to be like, if you don't listen to us, you're going to listen to CrossFit HQ when they say you need to do this way, X, Y, and Z.
These are opportunities. Why waste them? You know what I mean? It's one of those things where you can talk to an athlete, you say, they might come to you and say, why should I do this piece or that piece? And it's an opportunity to learn something. So I just look at the open and say, you know what? Let's get all the blunders, all the mistakes that potentially could have thrown you out and ruin your season with like you said, a missed video or not showing the right standard. Let's get that out of the way now. Let's take care of that now where there's a little bit less weight to it. And yes, you still need to adhere to the standards in the open, but this is an opportunity for you to practice that ahead of time. So you're not guessing, all right, do I have the right angle? Do I have the right setup? It's just reps.
Frankly, it still kind of blows my mind at how long, competitive athletes have needed to do basically the same thing every year and how much anxiety it still induces. And it's still where do I set my camera up? Shoot, I should have done that now. I've cooled down. Now I need to warm back up.
Yeah.
It's we've been doing this for you've been doing this for over a decade now.
But every other
that sort of
pursuit that we can try to draw a comparison to, I can go play pickup basketball. You can go play, you can go do the men's league hockey.
Yeah.
Like there are always parallels to okay, I'm going to go throw myself into this, and throwing yourself into it in the gym is the exact same thing you've been doing the entire time. So it's just so odd that there are so many reps put in without something very specific on the line. I think that create that level of anxiety for people. And unfortunately, I think it colors the rest of their entire year as well. You get people who get buried by a movement and then have ridiculous anxiety about that movement every time it comes up in a class or on their programming sheet. You have people who somehow forgot that lifting heavy weight is fun as fuck. And because they get one attempt, it's 700 degrees in the room and it's an FBI agent waiting to arrest you if you miss your lift. That's how people feel about lifting. And then it carries them into the rest of the year. And every time they go to lift, I'm going to put as much weight as I possibly can on the bar, hope I lift it, and then be really mad when I don't.
Yeah, to me, that anxiety that athletes deal with every single year is something that perpetuates because they're not willing to do this more often. They're not willing to put themselves up against it. So to me, one of the things I think is really important for an athlete to do is to put themselves up against adversity or put themselves in a situation that makes them very uncomfortable, like asking someone to judge them or someone to film them while they're going through, or dishing out no reps in the middle of a workout. You want that adversity. You want that experience so you know how to respond when it's appropriate, when it does matter. So to me, this is just an opportunity to kind of essentially silence your own mental anxiety and say, all right, I've done this a bunch of times, just another time at the gym. I mean, no one gets nervous anymore in the competitive realm about a 95-pound thruster until it's in the open. It's because it's the open. Nothing else has changed. You can still do that thruster a million times, but because someone said it was announced on Thursday night at 8 p.m., it becomes a huge issue for you. So to me, this is just an opportunity to help ease your mindset and ease your ability to, just execute the way that you're supposed to, because you've done it enough times now where it's just another day at the gym. And unfortunately, enough athletes don't do that. And because of that, we see this, rear its ugly head every single season.
Agreed. So high level bullet points. What are these strategy changes? What are we doing that's so much different this year? We are training full volume right up into the open. There is no sort of segue into the open. We're training full volume right up to then. And then comp block 1, which starts when the open starts, still has these focuses. So we're going in and it's this like hybrid phase 5 comp block 1. Don't want to confuse anybody, but basically you're still going to be going in with a specific focus of, I want to peak my clean and jerk. I want to get better at this movement, that kind of thing. The only difference will be there is no test retest that's there. Phase 4 is the home of the volume squat cycle. If you have not heard that already, we're going to be getting into that. That's the first time that we haven't done that in phase 1. And then the zone 2 training, what a lot of people like to call that we internally refer to as the Mafitone Method, will be making its way onto the site with 3 possible chances, sort of a teaser here for the end of the episode, but 3 possible chances to work on your endurance when it comes to that. The last thing that I'll say about super high level stuff before we get into specifics is that it is the time of year where you have to narrow your focus. And whether it is in the macro or the micro, whether it's you staring at your programming, which I think we do a good job of helping you on, and then the micro of how you're attacking specific pieces. But that peripheral vision needs to narrow down into more sports specific type stuff. You have to care more about like, okay, I have the choice today of sneaking 2 pieces in, 2 conditioning pieces in, or I do 1 and I warm up properly and I think about the strategy and I cool down.
Why do that?
That is the route that we have to start to take, because if we do that and we stare at this one single workout, it's not going to be that big of a deal when you're staring at a single workout in the open and then sort of moving on to quarterfinals.
Yeah, to me, that's a hard conversation to have, because a lot of athletes do really respond to like, oh, I have all these fun things to do today, but our tests never ask you to do that. Until you go compete somewhere in person, you're going to be asked to do one single thing and do that one single thing to the best of your ability. So to me, this is a chance for athletes to, again, try to disconnect themselves from noise, try to get themselves away from the trap of social media and scrolling endlessly on Instagram and seeing what everybody else is doing. You have no clue what's in the rest of their training day, if that's a compilation of 4 weeks of training or if that's one single session. So to me, in this situation, it becomes, let's look in the mirror and look back at ourselves and say, let's focus on me for a very specific amount of time. There are times in the year where it's very appropriate to compare with your training buddies and ask them what they're doing. And, oh, you got it in 12 minutes. I'm going to try to beat you and get an 11. Unfortunately, when that happens this time of year, you distract yourself away from what the ultimate focus is, which is being able to do, I don't know, 6 total tests in your season really, really well, assuming that you can get through the open and get to quarterfinals and get another handful of workouts. So to me, this is the point in the year where you no longer are so concerned with what's going around in the rest of the Misfit community in terms of whatever else is getting for scores and what pieces they're doing, but you focus on things that you need to do. And that might mean for a stretch of time that your training day looks like, I get up, I do my morning movement, I get to the gym, I do my warm up, I hit 1 conditioning piece, maybe 1 lift, and then I cool down and leave. And I don't need anything else, because that is all I need for my training day. And knowing when it's time to do that is a really important skill, because that mindset shift is what allows those high level athletes to go and crush you in workouts like the open, because they can dial that back and say, all right, I don't need 7 pieces. I can do 1 or 2 really, really well. This is what it looks like when you do 1 or 2 pieces very, very well.
I think a pretty common mistake that athletes who want to be competitive will will almost certainly go through at some point in their athletic careers, I want to go to semifinals, so I need to train like a semifinals athlete. It's like, wrong, bitch. You need to get through the open, and you need to hammer quarter. Like, you're not going to sniff the semifinals floor until you can dedicate the intensity necessary to qualify. And that, I think that's just like the biggest thing that folks miss. It's like, oh, I didn't go to Wadapalooza this year, I didn't make it. It's like that. Yeah, sure, that was the end result, but it was because your training leading up to that did not put you in a position where you could absolutely hammer the qualifier workouts as hard as you could in order to qualify. It's not that you're not necessarily fit enough to compete in a weekend-long competition, but you might not be fit enough to put the intensity forward once a week for 3 weeks in order to get there. So a lot of athletes like to put the cart before the horse when it comes to the qualifiers, thinking like, oh, this is the easy part of the competition, it's going to be hard when I get there in person. Well, you're not going to get there in person if you don't have the ability to ratchet up the intensity.
And I thought you said this perfectly to one of our members. We just took class here at 9 a.m. at our affiliate, and this athlete we were talking to was someone who I do definitely think cares about quarterfinals and would really like to see how well they can do. And they were getting ready to lift like 3 minutes after the Metcon was over, and you made a joke like, I'm not fit enough to go do that lift yet. But what you were really saying was, hey, I just poured a ton of intensity into what I just did. I'm not going to go just jump into something else because it exists. It's out there. I worked really hard on something that allowed me to improve my fitness for the last 15 minutes. If I want to go do something else, I have to earn the right to do that through a proper cool down from what I just did, a re-warming up, addressing skill, mobility. And then if I want to do that, then I'll pour my effort back into that. I'm not just going to jump into something else because someone so is like, come lift with me. It's like, that's the noise you need to ignore right now. You need to focus on you, not everybody else.
Yeah, I had to walk for 30 minutes while everyone was lifting yesterday to be able to do the third piece after skipping the second piece. So I understand that. All right, time to get into the nitty gritty here. I am going to go over the weightlifting for phase 4 first. The first 2 lifts that I want to talk about are peaking our back squat and getting better in the skill at the split jerk. Those 2 go together because our year-long plan for you to absolutely crush a clean and jerk within quarterfinals, within semifinals, whatever it is, deadlift, clean skill, back squat speed, back squat skill, clean, like 1 rep max, peaking phase, now back squat and the skill of the split jerk into comp block 1 of the clean and jerk.
Just painting that masterpiece.
That's how we're thinking about things, and that's why this back squat phase sits here specifically, and that's why the skill of the split jerk sits here specifically. I don't need to go into any details on the split jerk other than that it is skill, and you can make it not skill very easily. Drive aggressively under the bar, work on your footwork, get better at it. If you move like crap and you're strong, and they tell you have to lift after a Metcon, the barbell's not going over your head. And it's tragic. Like I value the fact that you worked your ass off to get stronger, that you are fit and that you were ready at that point, but it's just not going to work. So really try to think about it from the standpoint of
21.3.
I'll say, if I can interject really quickly, one of the things I think
it better be quick.
Yeah. If an athlete really wants to see what it should look like for a split jerk session, go watch one of those ATG, like Olympic lifters doing their whole session, and see the amount of focus and effort they put into doing one single lift, and ask yourself, does that look like anything I'm doing? And if you're like, yeah, I do 5 strict presses and then I start putting weight on the barbell and start split jerking, you're not doing what you need to be doing. Go watch that. Take that in. That's information. You know, one of the things I thought was really good, I think you mentioned a couple podcasts ago, it's like, how did I get good at weightlifting when CrossFit was starting? Oh, I went and watched people who were really good at it and I tried to copy them. You should still do that. That's not a lesson you can't follow anymore. So
someone's good at weightlifting, it's a monkey see, monkey do type of thing. And if they move really fast, you have a 9 trillion frames per second iPhone. So you're fine. All right. So back squat, this part is extremely important. You have 5 weeks straight of 5x5, 4x4, 3x3 at ascending weights. We have a video about this. Please pay attention to the content. When the content marries with the programming, then we get you closer and closer to executing the way we think.
Specifically the content on warming up and
warm up and cool down, because again, you cannot guess the day So for some of us, the 5x5 is the worst. Some of us, the 3x3. I think we can guess in this room who loved the 5x5 and not the 3x3. But you cannot, it's different for each person. And then you cannot guess what that thing is in your life, in your personal life, in the volume that's going to bury you on that very specific day that you're going to decide not to do it this right. And you're going to tweak your knee, and your knee's going to be bothering you until June because of the intensity that we put in season. So take the time to do this right. There's really no point in doing it otherwise. Otherwise, you're just burying yourself. It's like cool for your Instagram that you're squatting that often, but otherwise not really that cool for your leaderboard. So this is sort of a Spider-Man moment, great power, great responsibility kind of deal. Like, you really need to do this right, or it truly, honestly, is pointless. Like, if you don't think that you can put in the time to warm up and cool down and do your glute activation drills and, you know, fix the things that you're trying to work on instead of like 6 belts and 9 shoes and knee wraps and all that. If you can't do that, it's maybe twice a week and knock the percentage down 5 points. You can take a look at Hatchet and some of our other programs and how we make those things different. But this is one of those things that can either set the tone for all of your strength tests for the rest of the year, or it can, you know, cause a low back injury, knee injury, whatever it is. So really try to pay attention to that. Because we are squatting so many damn reps the entire time, our Olympic lifting that is mandatory is speed work within the power clean and the power snatch. Okay. So when we work within speed, we're saying we know that we can pull fast from the floor without fucking up our central nervous system. So when we have the sort of higher level volume when it comes to the deadlift, that's more weight. Even if it is 60% of your deadlift, that's a lot more than 60% of your power snatch, right? So we are keeping that in a place where you can work on speed, you can work on, you know, really snapping under the bar when it comes to the power snatch and the power clean. Again, it's sort of this combination of skill, where maybe you get to show off a little bit more within that skill than you might in other skill sessions. Like, this is the type of thing where the percentages are so doable that you need to really try and figure the movement out so that when it does get heavy and you move the exact same way, you finally PR.
I think I like the dial, you know, speed work is the dial at like 5 or 6. And then you talk about, the skill work's more like the 5 or 6. I'm going to speed, dial up to a 6 or a 7. And this is going to get us back closer to what the sport asks us to do when they're asking to cycle barbells in a Metcon.
Everyone's favorite, the GPP it's GPP deadlift season. That means you're going to work on skill, you're going to work on speed, you're going to work on heavy as fuck deadlifts. This matters a lot that this mix is in here, and your test, I won't say what the weight is, but it's 27, 21, 15, 9 for time. Change your own weights. Is there a 9 in there? Yes, there is a 9 in there. There's
You got plenty of time to do it.
sure is. Plenty of time to change your own weights. But this movement might be the one that just really fucks people over in the open and quarterfinals. The kind of thing where, like, there are people out there that are built a certain way that will bury you, that have no fitness if you can't figure out how to deadlift.
I think he's talking to us specifically.
Yeah.
I did not say that.
I could feel it
at all.
I felt it. No fitness whatsoever.
Zero
Got
fitness.
It. No fitness.
Hunter's going to get into the specifics in a bit here, but our in workout lifting is the shoulder to overhead. The only reason I want to bring this up within the sort of like lifting category is because it doesn't come up that often, but when it does, it has that same effect as the deadlift. You have people that are just like, it looks easy, nice wide base, pushing under the bar, you know, maybe not even, maybe kind of sneaking under the bar if it's one of the more leg intensive kind of things. So it's the kind of thing where if it does come up and you haven't been doing it, and we're going to make sure that you get it in all kinds of varying rep ranges and percentages of your own 1 rep max within workouts, it's a problem.
Such a super sneaky way to test your efficiency, because there are so many athletes who work way harder than is necessary, and that gets paired with something like a handstand push-up or something in the front rack, and all of a sudden you just fall completely apart because you work twice as hard as somebody else is beside you. So to me, this test is, I'm sure you're gonna talk about a few bit more, pretty nasty, but it's a great opportunity for you to figure out, can I cycle a barbell that could be theoretically thrown at me in the open or quarterfinals?
So if you are new to Misfit Athletics, we try to make sure that we remember that not every single person that's listening to this has done phase after phase with us. We have non-mandatory lifting as well. So when you go to the website, you're going to see these are the pieces that we want you to execute on, and then choose 0 to 1, 0 to 2, 0 to 3 of the following. That's how we personalize. That's how we go in and say, okay, this is the baseline that we're looking for. Now, here are the things that you can work on personally. So the 2 things that you can work on personally within this phase, the old Russian saying, to press, you must press. You're never going to be able to press a decent amount of weight, put a decent amount of weight overhead unless you get volume in. So we need to make sure that even though there's split jerk and there's in-WOD push jerk, that you get an opportunity to truly press using your upper body, sort of with more involvement than you would with the other lifts. So we have push or strict press into push press. So you're going to do both within a session. So you're really going to tire your upper body out, and then you're going to learn how to, go quarter extremity with heavier weight. And we really hope that you're keeping all of this in mind. You're like, okay, this is what my, positioning should look like and feel like in a split jerk, even though I'm not necessarily doing a split jerk right now. And then that will translate into the other movements. So if you're going to do that much pressing, if you're going to go 3 days a week, make sure it has skill transfer. The old standing bench press has absolutely positively no skill transfer unless there's bench or push-ups. All right, Misfits, just a quick break to shout out our show sponsors and hopefully save you a lot of dough on the dopest products in the game. We are brought to you by Sharpen the Axe. You can head to sharpentheaxeco.com. The record scratch noise insert. Or you can head to Miami, Florida for Wadapalooza. We have a crazy collection coming out at Wadapalooza, and maybe we'll release it on the store after online.
Maybe we won't.
Maybe we won't. But in the meantime, we got some dope shit. We got the new belts. We got the new hoodies. We got all kinds of cool shit. If you were a fan of the Luxe short back in the day, we have a revamped version of that called the Slate short. One of my favorite shorts that we've ever made. It is super comfortable and still somehow excellent to work out in. Sharpentheaxeco.com. Use the code word Keala, Keala. You save 10% and we donate 10% of your order to the Keala Foundation.
We are also brought to you by Proper Fuel. You can head to properfuel.co. Use the code word Misfit to save on your first order. You just heard us run our mouths quite a bit about phase 4. One of the key features is going to be that volume squat cycle. If you want to get a little bit more out of that cycle, check out some proper pre and some proper recovery before your session, after your session. Get all that you can from that, because again, this squat program is like the holy grail of the year for a lot of athletes when it comes to getting stronger at squatting. So again, you can head to properfuel.co.
I might have designed the product for the volume squat cycle.
Misfit to save on your first order. Don't miss it.
That's why we did the single serve, so I can just snort single serve packets between sets of back squat to not fall apart. And we're also brought to you by Pure Spectrum. You can head to purespectrumcbd.com. Use the code word Misfit to save some bones on those products. For me personally, a little anecdote. I bought my own cupping set because it turns out you don't need to pay like a PT or a chiropractor like $300 an hour to cup. And the salve works super well as kind of the medium to, put the cups on your skin and actually get that suction. So it kind of doubles as like the lubrication, as well as just the salve itself works at relieving that, muscle tightness, muscle fatigue, whatever you're going through. And you can kind of double use that for your cupping, your Graston, your own kind of like self-help mobility work type thing. So head to purespectrumcbd.com, use the code word Misfit to save on that, the tincture, the gummies, all that good stuff.
If you're a fan of the podcast, YouTube channel, Instagram, all of the content that we put out, the absolute best way to support what we do is to subscribe to our programming. And even if you're just throwing us a thanks by accident, you're going to get insanely fit. MisfitAthletics.com or the SugarWOD marketplace. If you are an individual programming athlete trying to go in and do your garage gym programming or qualify for quarterfinals, go to the CrossFit Games. We have programs for absolutely everyone. And if you are an affiliate owner or an affiliate athlete that wants to bug your affiliate owner to get them to the point where they go sign up at teammisfit.com, that is how you're going to get the affiliate programming and a lot of the stuff that we reference in this podcast, because it is an excellent program. It is what the three of us follow go with a little Mafitone sprinkled in.
Team Misfit phase 4 going to start the same time as Misfit Athletics. You guys are going to back squat, open-esque prep. So
I'm going to put these guys on the spot. There might be a Team Misfit Discord happening, so you guys can communicate and get your Team Misfit podcast.
Yes, there will be.
All right, back to the show.
And I would argue if you're electing
to
do non-mandatory lifting, it's because it's a huge hole in your game. How you move matters even more so than we've already stressed in this situation so far. So you have to be thinking about, is your rib cage down? Is the line of action of the barbell straight as it can be? And then go to the snatch. Like, are you doing what you need to be doing to make these improvements? Because this is not hey, I like lifting, so I'm going to do extra lifting. This is, I have a very serious hole in my game, and I'd like to make an improvement. And even if you don't have the sport in mind, if you just want to get better at the skill, how you move matters so much more. Something I love to say in class, that your skill unlocks your strength. Until you have the skill figured out, you're not going to be able to use your strength. And rant.
True. All right. And then the final non-mandatory piece is the squat snatch. So this is the type of movement that needs to be in every single phase. And when we're saying that it's non-mandatory, we've got sort of two camps that will be able to help out. Not strong enough within the movement, just need to get some reps in. Not good enough in the movement, need to get some reps in. We've played around with these linear progression models for the highest skilled athlete, someone who is unbelievable, the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. Triple, double, single does work within the snatch. For most CrossFitters, 4-3-2 as a linear progression works a lot better. And it makes sense, right? Just in terms of it's higher skill. You get more reps, it's higher skill. If it's not as much about your strength as you think it is, then we need to get more reps in. And then now we go to novice, or this is a huge weakness, and it's more along the lines of 5-4-3. So we're going to give you a bunch of time. You're going to see something in the programming that's like every 4 minutes for X amount of sets, 5 squat snatch. And we want you to take your time within those. And they're going to be at lighter percentages. Like, can I hit what's a perfect rep for me? Shake it out, look around, make sure everything's good, compose myself, take your time, hit the second rep. We're going to do that for all 5 reps to get in there. And again, if you go through this with a skill focus, you will 100% come out the other side with a better squat snatch. Probably for most people, better than you would if you were going heavier.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm such a big proponent, having been the idiot who did the load the barbell up every single time you go into the gym, see what happens. And oh shit, how come I'm at the same PR for, 2-3 years at a time? Because you refuse to take a step back and say, all right, set the ego aside. Let's figure out how to do this correctly.
I think the back squat, in any time, like we always talk about this, especially with weightlifting, like I give the example, a super rudimentary example to the affiliate athletes. It's like, okay, so you can deadlift it. You can overhead squat it if you took it out of a rack. You might even be able to power snatch it or power clean it, whatever it is. So why can't you snatch it? And the obvious answer is the technique, the technical component. So there aren't too many phases. Like, we don't have, the back squat isn't the high CNS lift for very many phases, for good reason, just because of how demanding it is and how many other things we have to be good at. But when we have a lift that is very, very much very much influences your strength in the Olympic lifts, and I say strength, not like technical proficiency, but you get stronger in the back squat and you're choosing those optional snatch sessions, it should be incredibly technique focused, because we are getting you stronger in the back squat. You're not getting stronger by snatching. You need to get more technically proficient, and then your strength will be able to show through when it's time. Yeah,
I mean, there's a note at the top that says, this is a little crass, but volume is not impressive, execution is, right? Like, burying yourself makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
It's going into every single one of these. How heavy can I go on this? And you can make things heavier than they actually are too. So if you're at whatever 55% of your snatch, but your pull is like 100% and the bar goes flying through the roof and you got to go find it in the parking lot, that is also
yeah. I mean, another thing I'll say to athletes is, like, every single rep that you do is either moving you closer to better or further away from better. There's no in between. It's not like, that was fine, I stayed exactly where I was. No, you either move like shit and you got a little bit worse, or you really focused, you made a good lift and you got closer to what you want to look like or what you think you look like when you're doing the Olympic lifts. So yeah.
Truth. All right. We're going to get into testing and skill focus now. Sherb has written up a doozy for you guys for making sure that you're ready for handstand push-ups in the open.
Take it away.
Sure be in the Metcon game.
The handstand push-up is one of those movements that, you know, for years was the cog in the wheel for a lot of athletes. Like, this is the one movement that kicked me out, made it so I could not advance to the next stage. And that typically comes from a skill-based situation. They're moving improperly in the handstand push-ups. They're good for a set, but as soon as either their shoulder gets tired or their midline fatigues out, it becomes impossible to continue. You can't hit that standard. Sorry, the workout's over for you. See you next year. So one of the things that's really important to us is kind of seeing the future iterations of the sport and how the sport is going to progress. And one thing that you've missed that have done a really good job of is trying to commit to, you know, I'm going to create that tripod, then I'm going to get my butt in the wall, then I'm going to make sure I kick in that same order and I do the same mantra every single handstand push-up. What's the next iteration? Let's add a little deficit. Let's make it a little bit harder to adhere to those points of performance and see how your capacity lies. And one of the ways we're going to make sure that we do that throughout the entire phase is having sessions that are focused more on the speed and the skill of the handstand push-up, and then also give you opportunities to accumulate volume, because sort of like you said a minute ago with the strict press and the push press, in order to get better at these things, we need to be doing them frequently, and some of our sessions need to be highly technical, and I need to focus on doing my sets of 10, 8, 6, 4, 2 super fast with the same repeatability across all of my sets. And then other days, hey, guess what? It's time for me to see what I can actually get to for a number, because we might get a workout that is like the 55s from a few years ago in the open, where they put this ginormous set of handstand push-ups in front of you and ask you, all right, see what you got. And hopefully through both of these sessions, you have enough information to know, all right, I can do this many reps fast, but then I know I can also break them up into these sets and continue to play along. And I'll have confidence in the open that, you know, I've done this with a little extra deficit and I know I can repeat that movement. So if I can put this together with a little bit of a higher level difficulty, I feel pretty confident that I can eliminate all the extra noise about how scary handstand push-ups are, because I just put myself through these last 7 or 6 weeks of really focused work on handstand push-ups, and I'm confident I can go back into it. Now, one thing I will say about this test, and something that's really important, do not neglect the stimulus of that workout. That's a really important part of this piece, and something that separates the best athletes from, you know, the middle of the road athletes, is they can see that workout and understand exactly how that's supposed to be executed. So again, when that workout comes up, that test workout, I believe it's day 5 of the very first week.
Yes.
Make sure you pay attention to that stimulus and ask yourself, am I just going to go do this workout exactly as it's written and get, you know, maybe 3 rounds of it? Or am I going to adhere to the stimulus and make sure I get better at this? Because it's really important to me that, yes, you see what's in front of you and you realize that this is kind of like the gold standard of what we think an athlete can do, but then you also personalize for yourself so you get better. Don't just put yourself up against something if you can, it's not ready for you. So again, this is one of those situations where you might look at the hatchet option, and guess what? It still has me focusing on handstand push-ups, but it has a dose that's more appropriate for my fitnesses. This is going to move the needle more for me than putting my head and just kind of bashing against the wall.
Correct me if I'm wrong, it's an AMRAP, right?
Yes.
So if you go over to Hatchet, you can produce the same type of volume that you might be able to on the other side. So
ratchet up that speed.
Yeah. So there's a good chance that if you just listen to Sherb talk and said, oh, come on, rip these babies out, boring, you're going to want to hear what Hunter has to say, because we don't have too many people that walk into the gym and go, man, I wish it was chest to bar and handstand push-ups today. They do exist, but they're not that common.
Talking about interval test.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
All right. So yeah. So our interval test, and then the following kind of skill sessions are based a little bit on 21.3, which, if you remember, was basically front squat.
Talk about boring.
Front squat toe to bar thruster, front squat chest to bar thruster, front squat bar muscle up thruster. So we
should have been 100 bar muscle ups. Call it.
We took a very similar structure. So get fucked. Is that a personal attack? Me 6 hours through 30 bar muscle ups.
No, I think you did a great job of rewriting it.
Thank you. Yes, I do too. So it'll look very similar, just with a little bit of a spice to it. We actually made the barbell movements not quite as negligible as they were.
It's like
for
when
a
something
lot of you.
smells bad but tastes good.
Give me an example. I need an example.
Got an example?
Dude, I went to this fancy restaurant once, and I had these wings that smelled disgusting, and they were so good.
Good.
They're like pungent smelling.
You remember the flavor?
It was like a sweet Asian glaze. I'm wondering if there was like durian for like, some shit like that. Cause they smell disgusting.
Durians are
like I went and washed my hands after I ate them because my hands
before
smelled.
you ate and after.
All right.
Good to know about the gymnastics.
Basically it's an interval where you have a certain amount of time to complete a certain amount of work. And then, if you finish it, you need to rest. You need to wait for that next interval to start. And then your score is going to be your total working time. So we made this workout. It is certainly doable. It's not one of those workouts where it's like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish. There are certainly people who will not finish, and that's fine. But it's more intended to be, how fast can I do this now that the reps and kind of the movements are amped up just a little bit from last year? Am I able, what is my bar pulling capacity like when I'm pretty fucking tired? And specifically, not only can I just do the work, it's can I do the work fast? Yeah. And that's a huge difference between, the best and folks who are just kind of like
playing along,
trying to play along. It's no longer about can you do the work, it's how fast can you do it. So it's a kind of a pull-up, chest to bar pull-up, bar muscle up, one of those. It gets more difficult as you go sorts of things. And probably more importantly, the skill work that follows it. Basically, once a week, it is intended to, like, almost, again, we're kind of giving you the answer to the test, giving you the answers to the test every single week by giving you a bar pulling progression of combination of pull up, chest to bar, and bar muscle ups. That's like, okay, how's your movement efficiency when you get tired? Because there's always some sort of workout like this where the gymnastics, the pull up or the chest to bar pull up or whatever it is, always just the cumulative effect eats away at athletes. So that's the kind of skill progression that we have. And then we've also, towards the end of the phase, have some kind of a style of skill work where we're basically telling you to open up with a large set of your, let's take pull-ups, for example, and then do multiple small sets with as little rest as possible. And that was a very, very intentionally kind of written skill progression and that's kind of like the finale of that
stand around and die.
Yeah, I mean, it's
how
like it's
how it
and,
works.
And it was modeled after. I was thinking like, okay, how do most athletes? How would I tell most athletes to attack a gymnastics kind of heavy sort of workout like this? Well, it's almost always open up with a big but sub-maximal, kind of like an 80 to 90% rep range sort of set. And then it's, the next set maybe is a little bit smaller. And then you're going to hit that floor where it's like, okay, I hop up, I do 4 pull-ups, I hop down, turn around, do 4 pull-ups. Like that always happens in the open. So we're trying to, and in quarterfinals. So we're trying to basically get you comfortable with, hey, I can do this large set, and then I can switch gears and I can do these little small sets until I chip away at all the reps that I need to, so that I can move on, so that I don't just get stuck standing around staring at the pull-up bar, staring at the wall and handstand push-ups, whatever it is. So I think that interval test will be a good, certainly doable within those time parameters, but like the fittest, it's going to be how fast can you go?
Sport is how little do you rest. Everyone has this essentially the same defined amount of time to work out or how many reps to do. It's who rests the least. So I know you say it all the time on the podcast, like it's great to be able to access the fact that you can do 25 unbroken bar muscle ups, but do you rest for 2 minutes afterwards?
There's a gray area at points in the season. There is no gray area during qualifiers. There's something about online qualifiers where you just have so many damn people who have entered the pool that could be their wheelhouse. And for you to go up against someone, we have to go to strategy, right?
The market has set the parameters. Like the people
you have to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, the people you are competing against are not challenging themselves to see who can go unbroken,
right?
And need 2 minutes of rest before they do their 20 bar muscle ups, and then 3 minutes after. It's like, man, I don't give a fuck. I don't care if you do 20 sets of 1 bar muscle up in the a qualifier. If you get it done faster than the person next to you, like, you're fitter.
True. Push jerks.
Okay. And again, so if you're unfamiliar, maybe new, new to the podcast, new to the programming, one of the things that we do each phase is we kind of have a dedicated in-WOD lift. And that lift is usually, or always, it's not a lift that we're focusing on specifically within the confines of strength work. And nor is it necessarily going to be something that's just like exclusively high volume or something like that. We're trying to put a lift and apply kind of percentage-based numbers to it.
Very much like personalized Metcons.
Yeah, it's a personalized Metcon, exactly. So we're trying to get you comfortable moving a proportionally heavy barbell while you're breathing hard. And we were talking about it before. It is the push jerk for this phase. So we've got kind of also an interval where we're pre-fatiguing your ability to use your legs and your hips, and then asking you to use your legs and your hips to do some push jerks. And from a transferability to competition standpoint, like you were saying, I don't know when the last time, all I can think of is the 1 rep max shoulder to overhead from the games in like 2014, maybe something like that. I don't know if you guys are, maybe I'm wrong, but it's not often, but there's almost always.
It came up in that Masters workout, the heavy shoulder to overhead and muscle ups, the age group online qualifier. That it's random.
Yeah. So my point is that it's very rarely just a 1 rep max isolated on its own.
Yeah,
it's almost always under fatigue. It's almost always mixed into a Metcon, whatever it is. But it's, like you said, one of those movements where like people find like, oh wow, this is so easy, and then you stop doing it and you feel like you just got hit by a Mack truck.
Yeah.
And there's a pretty good skill component to it as well. So push jerks, basically under fatigue, the interval test, it's, assault bike double under, and then push jerks at increasing weight. So it's great. Yep. I want you to be able to cycle a lighter barbell for lots of reps, and then the big athletes, those big strong athletes, like, well, you get to play too towards the end when that barbell gets pretty heavy. But that's the test. The weekly progression for that looks very much like, hey, here are the numbers that we put in the test. What do those correspond to percentage-wise for a wide range of athletes? And basically you'll go, week 1, it's 60%, week 2, it's 60 to 70, week 3, it's 70 to, 70%. And that's kind of the progression that we take you through with a variety of, okay, let's fatigue your shoulders and see how well you push jerk. Okay, let's fatigue your legs. Let's fatigue your lungs. Let's do whatever you could possibly get thrown at during the open, quarterfinals, semifinals, and let's make sure that you're comfortable cycling a barbell in a movement that is a pretty solid combination of, skill and actual strength, stamina.
All right. Last but not least, we're going to go into our sort of monostructural conditioning, as it's referred to often within the CrossFit space. The reason why earlier in the year, phases 1, 2, and 3 are the monostructural conditioning is so important is because we get to go into, unless it's running, obviously, we get to go into it and we have this like heads up display. We always joke that it'd be great if CrossFitters had the Tony Stark heads up display when they were doing actual CrossFit. And, the math was calculating itself, was doing all of these things. We can go in on machines and manipulate energy systems in an ultra specific way. You can hold exact paces. You can hold heart rates. You can do all of these things that really move the needle for you. It's measurable. It's like, how do you know if you're getting a tiny bit better at CrossFit? It can be very challenging day in and day out. I know exactly that I'm getting a tiny bit better because it's the same time domain and I'm going 10 calories per hour faster, 0.2, seconds off on my 500 meter split, 1K split, whatever it is. That's all well and good. It's excellent. It's what I think for most athletes is the missing link between them and their potential. But that has to translate into the actual sport that we do. And you're not going to get a chance to show off all of that in that exact same way, probably until semifinals, if not all the way until the actual CrossFit Games. And even then, it's 2, 3, 4, 5% of the points that are up for grabs. So how do we take that same stuff and have it translate into what you're doing that's sports specific? We have aerobic bias and anaerobic bias that is only movements that are going to be done within the open and quarterfinals. We're still asking for the same level of dedication to figuring out what you're doing. We're going to give you some examples here in a second, but the anaerobic and aerobic focus of this monostructural conditioning is CrossFit. We're doing it for both. What? And I'm actually going to read out, for the purpose of discussion, the aerobic test. We have AMRAP 24 minutes, 20 wall balls, 300-meter row, 40 double unders. Now,
40 double
you
unders.
would assume,
Sounds
What a
hard.
fucking
you would
troll.
assume that for a good athlete, there are 5 to 6 variables within this workout. We're going to tell you right now that there is one single variable in this workout. And if there's more than that, you're doing it wrong. Okay. So you're going into this workout, and I understand that any of the tests that we have talked about here, that when you see one that's a weakness, what does that mean for test week? It means you're checking in. You're finding out where you're at. It's doesn't have to be, I'm going to blow the doors off this, or I'm going to come out the gate hot, whatever. You are trying to like set the standard for what do I need to get better at, and I'm moving on to that. The only variable within this entire workout is how hard you row. That's it. The wall balls have to be unbroken. You have to be good about your transitions with how you get your feet in and out of the rower. Your double unders have to be unbroken. You have to be obsessed with how your rope is laying on the ground, what direction you're facing. You have to get back to the wall balls immediately. We're talking about a set of 20 and a set of 40 throwaway sets for an MFT level athlete. Okay. So the only variable here that separates you from anybody else that does this workout correctly is how hard you row. Now, what's important about that is what I'm not saying is row as hard as you can, because then you definitely have all 7 variables, right?
Yes.
The only variable, the only thing that you are going to try and figure out that is perfectly ideal for you is your 500-meter split that you are holding within this workout. Now, there's nuance, right? We have people with different energy systems. We got people like you goons who can probably pick a pretty gnarly pace and just force yourself to hold it. We have other people that need to start hot, slow down a little, and end hot, right? And I'm literally talking about 2 or 3 seconds off of your split that it oscillates. And you set your floor, you set your ceiling. But again, this workout, obviously your capacity comes into play when you sit down on the row, but everything else has to be the same for every single person that does this workout.
It goes back to the conversation that we were having a minute or two ago. Like, this is an open type workout where, again, the only thing that matters is that at no point in the workout are you standing around. And even like how fast you row, like you could even get away with like a round or two of, 300 pretty sad meters on the rower. Like, it's like the difference.
Think about how much time you can make up on the rower, basically none.
Yeah.
And how much time you can make up on somebody through your transitions.
Yeah. That's it. So it becomes, and this is a good, like, great segue into the longer stuff and the Mafitone stuff that we're going to talk about. But like, since basically the dawn of Misfit Athletics, it's always been do your bitch work. And like you were saying, it's really the only place where we can say, hey, you are going to work continuously for this long. You can't do that with any Metcon. I can give you a 20-minute Metcon. I can give you a 3-minute Metcon. You are going to stop. You are going to rest at some point. We stick your ass on a machine, like,
no place to hide.
Unless you decide that you're going to break up the machine calories, which, send me a video if you do that. But
I will not be videoing that.
Yeah.
You are, like Drew said, you are able to manipulate those energy systems, and that is how you get to the point where you don't need very much rest. And the only thing that matters is like, oh, I'm fit enough to do 20 wall balls. I'm fit enough to do 40 double unders, and I'm fit enough to keep going round and round for 24 minutes. All I have to do is choose the smartest pace for me to row at. And like, that's find me an open where that wasn't a factor. And like, I don't know, I'll send you a candy bar or some shit.
You send him a candy bar?
I'll send him a Snickers.
Good, I'm going to
It's
get
got a special meaning around here.
I was going to ask you, Drew, playing, coach to the people here. Is there a good metric if you have no clue what to row at? Like, you're going into this workout and you feel like you're going to yo-yo up and down between a 130 and a 230. Like, what I should use is kind of my metric if I'm a little bit unfamiliar with.
Yeah, I mean, it's rowing. Honestly, your floor, your ceiling, however you want to look at it, because the number lower is better.
Yes,
we'll just leave it at that. 24 minutes of rowing would be the place that you'd start, right? You'd say that is the absolute, like if I'm going to go in and do a 5K,
my 5K.
what can I hold, right? It's not your forever pace. We're not rowing a marathon. We're only doing this workout for that amount of time. And there's going to be so many muscle groups that you get to recruit on the rower that you don't really need to use too much on the other two movements. So the absolute slowest you should row is at your 5K pace, right? The problem with athletes is they start way faster than their 5K pace. They go beyond that, and then they get into sad mode, and they're not doing the whole intensity is freedom, suffer, smile, endure, all that good stuff that we like to talk about. So I would start there. And what's great about this, again, just like an open workout, is you can make that prediction. You can go in and say, sure, for you, is this 145, 149, 141, like, you know what I mean? Like, where exactly do you think you would slot in at on something like this? Adjust while you're going, and then, look at your average and think about how you felt and what your transitions were like, and try to be dead on until it's time to send at the end.
I mean, without getting super analytical at this, like one thing that stands out to me is you have like 40 seconds of wall balls and 20 seconds of double unders, and then about roughly a minute of rowing. So half the workout you're going to be rowing, right? 12 minutes.
Is intentionally half rowing. Yeah. Exactly.
Hey, what would your pace be if I asked you to row for 12 minutes? And another way I think of this, and one thing I was thought you might say.
And that's probably the ceiling.
Yeah, that's the ceiling.
Right.
One thing I was going to say too is you can be very aware of your breathing in this. If you're hyperventilating in your 300, how do you think those double unders and wall balls are going to go after you get off the rower?
Yeah, good news. You got a lot of rounds to figure out where you went wrong in your first 5 rounds.
Absolutely nothing wrong with going into the first time and maybe having a strategy that's a little bit too hot. But don't do it a second time is my point here. Learn how your body responds to different paces. Figure out what your breathing feels like when you hold a 151 versus a 142. Like, the more information you have and the more you can break this stuff down, the more you're going to be apt to be prepared for the open, but also for the retest when this comes back around. So all I was trying to get there is try to read the workout and guess to your best of your ability how long things will take, how much time you're going to have on the rower, and use that to help dictate your pace.
Truth. And then you get to practice things that are almost exactly the same. Typically, we're going to pull out one variable, let you practice those two things together so you can really think about, what does this transition mean for me? Going back and forth, give you a little bit of confidence to go into that. The anaerobic test. Very excited about this personally. The anaerobic monostructural test is, I would say, the shorter baby of the dumbbell snatch, burpee box jump over workout, and the fact that I think that dumbbell snatches are boring. So we've introduced your favorite monostructural open movement, the rower. So we have rowing and burpee box jump overs. This has been tested. And what I will say is the person who tested this that got the score that we thought was sort of that upper echelon type of score rode at a very steady pace and went hard on the burpee box jump overs, which is probably not going to be the strategy for someone who's maybe a little bit bigger that dominates the rower. But I think setting the tone on what your pace is on the burpee box jump overs and not allowing that to deviate too much is a massive factor within this workout. 100%. It's something that didn't cross my mind to the extent that it really is until I watched this person go through that. And then we had another athlete who, well, we got to say it now to sort of put it out there. Brady watched Austin and basically said, please, and said he was going to crush him on this. And that will be his final week of prep going into Wadapalooza. So it should be fun to see.
Can't wait to see that.
Whether that is the case or not.
Get that on camera.
And again, I mean, we're going hard on the same group of movements. We're going to send, we're going to build, we're going to do the, send and reach.
This is one of those workouts to me where when it shows up in the open, or let's say a similar type of workout where it's very low skill, very short time domain, people are going to do it at what they think is fast and then look at the scores that roll in and are going to be like, holy fuck, yeah. I have no idea what intensity is. And there's just some workouts that you either eat them and then die after, or they eat you and then you're like, shit, what just happened? You still die.
You still do die after a little bit.
More on the inside than the outside.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's fair. That's fair. So, yeah. And one of the things that's going to help you a shitload with learning how your energy systems work is the introduction of the Mafitone Method, making its return 5 years later at misfitathletics.com. I think the community is more ready for it now than they have been in the past. It's a little cooler now. It's one of the hot topics. So what we're talking about, you're going to have 3 opportunities every single week to work on what most people refer to and get confused about as zone 2 training. I do want to take a second to talk about why people do get confused about this. So what it's going to look like for you on our website is you're going to do 180 minus your age is the heart rate that you are going to use for a 45-minute session. We have a heart rate, a very specific, extremely important heart rate warm-up that takes you 15 minutes to go into that. And that is what this is going to look like. And from a scientific standpoint, what are we looking for? We are looking for you to train below your lactate threshold so that your lactate threshold improves. So if you are going at the exact same heart rate this entire phase, you really want to work on this, you either don't really have the breathing, or your legs are always burning out on you, or your upper body's always burning out on you. We have the C2 bike or the ski erg that comes into play there. If your pace at that same heart rate goes up, you have improved your lactate threshold. You have improved how hard you can go until your body starts to freak out and hyperventilate, like Sherb was referencing before. The problem is when you go online and you type in zone 2 training and you click on images on Google, you get these breakdowns of people trying to guesstimate what your heart rate would be in those zones as a percentage of your max heart rate or as a percentage of 220 minus your age, whatever it is. Here's the issue. Zone 2 training, by definition, in terms of what we are talking about, in terms of lactate threshold, the number 2 is the millimolars of lactate within your muscle tissue. So are you going to do a biopsy, or are you going to buy one of the lactate readers and jab yourself and do that post-training? Probably not. It's when we make the barrier to entry so high on something so simple and effective, that's when there are issues. Someone much smarter than the 3 of us, Dr. Is it Jeff Mafitone? I don't know his first name. Yeah. It is Phil. There's not really that much of a difference.
Jeff.
Dr.
Dr. Phil.
Phil
The funny thing is, I've read everything.
Dr. Oz is zone
I've read
2.
everything he's ever written, watched every video he's ever been in. I don't know his name. That probably explains a lot to you about who I am as a person.
That checks out.
That checks
100%.
out. So he has figured out that the starting point for most athletes is 180 minus their age. Now, there are certain nuances to this that do come into play. I'll bring up a specific athlete. Luka Jukic cannot get his heart rate up on the C2 bike to a point where he is, quote unquote, in his what would be his zone 2. It's not possible for him to do with his legs not burning out. We're obviously not staying below lactate threshold if our legs are burning, but we're not breathing at all. So there's a bit of an issue there. So for somebody like that, I would suggest you just don't touch the C2 bike. You go run, you row, you ski, whatever it is that can get you.
Bike works well. I don't know if you want
get you into that place. I don't necessarily want to promote that because I don't love the idea that I can't always have the damper on a 10 necessarily. But if it's all you have, 100% use it.
Still worthwhile. Yeah,
it's sort of like when people say like, I didn't get to do my cardio fasted this morning, so I didn't do it. That's stupid. Do your cardio. Like fasted's a little bit better. If you don't, not doing it is really bad.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how I think about that. So for somebody like him, if you are dead set on doing it or you only have one machine, what we do is your good old fashioned linear progression. I gave him 200 watts on the bike to hold week 1, and then 210, and then 220, and then 230, and then 240, and then 250. And he's getting up into what used to be some more like middle distance, like not long distance at all, paces that he used to hold. And now he's up there and his heart rate is still nowhere near getting to the place that it needs to be. But again, if you are getting ready to go into the open and it is, really about that conditioning, I do recommend for people that just can't get their heart rate up to find a machine where you can get your heart rate up. And then, there's an article that's going to be on the website, after this podcast drops that will give you instructions on exactly how to tackle a machine where you can't get your heart rate into that certain place.
There's 2 things I'll add to this. So like for the listener, basically we're saying they're all optional. One is that all 3 sessions are optional. One of them is like on day 2. The other 2 are weekly work pieces.
One
right?
of them is morning movement, and one of them is weekly work. So you could be leaving the most important part of your training for the entire year off to the side and not thinking about it because you don't pay attention to weekly work and morning movement.
Yeah.
So
it's optional. It's, it's always 45 minutes on that machine. One thing I would say is you have to warm up. I can't tell you how many people and athletes, and this is like even remote athletes of mine, and that's on me for not like saying, hey, warm up, but hey, warm up. And we even put in there, like, it's one of the like beefiest like pieces as far as number of lines goes, because it's important. And it's like, this is a training piece. This is not a recovery piece. This is not a throwaway piece. Like, you need to warm up correctly in order to get the benefits of this piece. Because if you spend the first 10 minutes getting your heart rate up and the last 30, 35 actually doing the work, like, you're leaving a ton on the table. And then 2 is, I would recommend, just through personal experience, sticking with the same machine. And it says that in there. Basically, like, you have 3 options. You can either run, row, or C2 bike. 4 options, ski as well. You can choose one of those machines to do. And then, in every training piece, it's like, it's copy and paste. We copied and pasted because you're going to do the same thing every time. And I would recommend, and you guys, we can just argue about this if you want, I would recommend sticking with the same machine for the entire phase. And that's mostly just to, I think, after having done it myself, specifically on the C2 bike for a long enough period of time to see the benefits within my Metcons, versus like when I start to mix things up, there is an element of like the localized musculature that you are using to do the zone 2 work, receiving a lot of that benefit. So for me, like, my legs don't burn out nearly as fast as they used to.
Right.
And my heart rate doesn't jack up as a result of a set of, 20 thrusters, whatever it is.
Right.
So my recommendation would be to stick with the same machine, even though it'll tell you, it does say like, hey, pick the machine that you did during test week.
Exactly.
But don't be like, I'm bored this week, I'm going to go do something different. Like, do your best to stick with the same machine.
Also a proof of concept there. You can see yourself getting better at these things if you use the same machine. The test retest is right there in front of you.
Yeah.
The only thing, I don't know if you were going to say it, Drew, the solutions if you struggle to get your heart rate up, speaking out to the big boys that have lots of endurance or potentially more aerobic bias.
Go run. Your heart rate will get up.
Run or ski. It's really simple. I mean, I'm someone that's done all 4 different styles of these Mafitone methods when we were talking just zone 2 and like go out there and hold your heart rate. I've done it on all the machines. The ones that I typically struggle most on, C2 bike is number 1 because it's kind of supports my body weight and makes it pretty easy for my legs to do the work, and I don't have to support my own tissues, so heart rate stays a little bit more chill. If you find yourself in that situation, or maybe your warm-up doesn't go the way you want it to, you really just can't get yourself there, you may need to pivot after your warm-up to a different machine. But just know out there that if you're struggling to do that, you find a machine where you're supporting your own body weight, aka running or skiing, you'll probably find it a lot easier to get to that heart rate. This is something that I've had to do personally, and I really love this ski erg, specifically this time of year. You're talking about localized fatigue. What's muscle group that I love? Fatigue in the open, the upper body through pulling gymnastics, pressing gymnastics, handstand walk, all those things. What better way to prepare those tissues if you're someone that flames out up overhead or anything with your upper body than skiing, because it puts you to that localized fatigue in that same muscle group.
You also, especially if you've never done this sort of thing before, you need to expect and not be upset when the pace on your machine is probably pretty low. Like you're going, like, for a lot of you guys, especially
if you really need this,
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy how
if you're
bad your pace
exactly.
is when
If you're
start.
running and rowing for me is what gets my heart rate up the fastest. And like when it's at the correct heart rate, like I'm running and rowing pretty fucking slow. And you got to put your ego away and just stare at the heart rate. Flip the monitor down, like don't give a shit what it looks like. I know something you like to do is you switched it to watts because you have no concept of what your wattage
the scoring
should
for
be.
this is actually watts. Yeah, we're looking for that metric. It's the easiest one to measure, especially with stuff that's more steady state.
Yeah, and then you got to experiment a little bit. So if you like warm up and then you're moving and it's like I'm having trouble getting my heart rate up. We were doing a C2 bike, 45 minutes on the bike the other day. You were biking on what, a a 4.5 or a 5 at like how many RPMs?
Just over 80.
Just over 80, and I'm sitting over there on a -6 at 104 RPMs, and that gets
It's a thing to behold when he's doing it.
Yeah, it's
looks like a cartoon. Like his lower body is not a part of it. He's like super calm, having a conversation with you, and his legs are moving 12,000 miles an hour.
Well, it was actually from something you told. Like you were like one of the first times I was doing it, I was at like a 2 or a 3.
Yeah.
And I was in like the 85, and I had my heart rate up in the correct zone, like at the correct rate. But I was like, yeah, my legs are just fried. And you were just like, your legs shouldn't be fried. And it takes a little bit of adaptation on the C2 bike just because of how localized the fatigue is to your quads. But you were like, just bump that damper down and go RPMs higher. And it took me a while to get comfortable at 100 RPMs. Like you go out and do that, you're going to be like, how the fuck does anybody do this for 45 minutes? But it takes just a little bit of practice. I'm no fucking hero, but take your time, mess around with the damper, figure out what works best for you and what gets your heart rate into that zone without, completely obliterating the local musculature. And get after it.
2 final anecdotes on the Mafitone method. This the Mafitone test is so challenging for people with type A personalities. You are going to get slower throughout the entire thing, and that is on purpose, and you are not allowed to go faster. Yeah. So that is the type of thing that is really challenging for athletes. If we're going to go in and test one of your energy systems, a very specific subsection of your energy system, we have to hold you there. And we know that if you're doing the exact same thing over a period of time and you're stuck there, that your output's going to go down. So you're going to be looking at whichever machine you choose. There will be a distance, and there's 3 sections to it. So you are going to do steady state throughout the entire thing, but you're going to have 3 checkpoints. You're going to have one after 1/3 of it, one after 2/3, and then one when you're done. Those 3 splits are going to be your scores within this workout, and it has to be at that exact heart rate when you go into it. So again, you are going to get slower, and that is okay. If you do get faster, you didn't warm up, it's going to, the same thing's going to, your sessions and your data is going to be all screwed up if you don't do the warm up that we write. Your wattage is going to be all over the place on a machine. Your speed when you're running is going to be all over the place. So please take the time to actually go in and do that. It's honestly like not even really a warm up. It's more just like you're doing it and then like, okay, that's what that feels like.
It's
and then
like
you go in.
calibration, I think of it
Exactly.
as. It's like you get into that zone and you're going to vary. I've found that I vary a little bit from day to day, depending on whether I have eaten, because I've done it both fasted and, just kind of middle of the day after eating a normal meal. Like my paces are a little bit different. How warm it is outside. You were talking about how, it's a 50 degree day in December. You go for a run and you feel like a superhero because your heart rate can stay super low. There's a lot of variables that, that can impact where your heart rate's at. So don't be overjoyed or disappointed if, it looks like you're going backwards after like 3 weeks. And a lot of the data on this that, you've talked a little bit about is it takes a while of doing this type of stuff super consistently for it to, make an impact. I think it certainly can if somebody were to do this, a couple times a week over the course of the phase, but you've got to stick with it and stow the ego, especially if you're somebody who's like, I don't like what that pace looks like. Like, I don't care.
You can't care about the pace if you want to get better at this stuff.
No.
At the end of the day, it's nice to see that you've improved across the entire phase, and I don't want you to say you can't care about your score, but if you're so obsessed with the nitty-gritty, the day in, day out, you have to turn your screen down and just be obsessed with maintaining the heart rate and the cadence you need to be at to get a good stimulus here. Because again, if you are too concentrated on pace is embarrassing and I'm not getting any better, the session's not going to help you.
Fuck, it's more embarrassing that you can't read directions.
So that was one of 2.
That was great. I like that.
That was one of 2 final anecdotes. The other one, it would just be that, this is something that my remote clients have been doing for years. And when you do it right, it is staggering the splits that you can knock off when it comes to both your progression throughout the phase and your 45 minutes, but then the test specifically, because the test is really, really where it's at in terms of, okay, this is the exact same distance. This is the exact same heart rate. Was I able to figure this out? And it's, mostly physical, but there's that mental aspect as well. If you're doing it and you're stressed out, your heart rate's going to be up and you're not really going to get to express that. I have taken this very seriously personally for about 6 months. I started at an average of, don't bleep this out, even though it's obscene, Ted, 100 watt average over the course of 45 minutes.
Can we get a conversion to a more common metric for the people? Do you know what that is?
Probably
100 watts?
like a 220,
Okay.
maybe maybe slower.
Could probably check.
Hold on though. So I do Mafitone Method running or biking every other day. And I switch back and forth. This week, the goal will be 190 watts, which is closer to about a 2-minute pace. So we're talking about the exact same heart rate, and we're talking about, 6 months. Honestly, that's even a stretch. I don't think that's right either, because it was post CrossFit Games. Just feels like 6 months. So we're talking about 3 or 4 months of doing that every other day. Things get in the way, other stuff, sort of happens, whatever. What is it? Yeah, that's what you get.
Computer is what it is.
So you get for trying to make fun of me.
To be fair, this is a forum. It's not like the C2 website, but the forum has like a list of like 20 of them. And
Yeah.
it does not go to 100 watts. The first one is 104 watts at a 2.5 minute pace. So
There you go. Yeah, right. And I'm one of
proof how much
those.
it matters.
Yeah, and I'm one of those people where I can be at a really high heart rate and my rate of perceived exertion is low. So I can go out, like I ran a comfortable but didn't check my heart rate 10K before Thanksgiving, and I averaged a 177 heart rate.
Yeah, and
which is not 180 minus my age, remarkably.
And for
years
for
old.
reference, that goes from like what is probably a 232, 233 per 500 pace all the way down to a 203.
Exactly.
It's a huge
Like
improvement.
that's a
Right.
massive
Yeah.
improvement.
Yeah, so and that's just me doing that, and I can tell you right now, I'm a completely different athlete. I'm not even the way that the move and I feel within Metcons is not even. I have nothing to compare it to. I don't feel like the same person. Yesterday, after a week of vacation, I sent 5 sets of burpees comfortably. It wasn't. I didn't care
It's
at
funny,
all.
I was just about to say that.
Like, not even a little.
Normally, that would put you in a fucking
Right.
grave.
My first round would have been a touch faster, and then I would not have been able to push up off the floor to get into that. When I was obsessed with the more bodybuilding style and the bench press and all that, my strict handstand push-ups went through the roof only on the weeks that I was dedicating myself to the ski erg. So there's something very powerful about this. And I think I truly believe that this is the missing link within CrossFit programming, just because we have no way to monitor where we're at. We have no way to stay below that lactate threshold, which then moves that up. And then that's the only place that we live within CrossFit, right?
Yep.
We got to move that up. We have to. We have to be the person that's under control, that knows how to manipulate these things at a much higher cadence than other people. And this is one of the only ways to really sort of systematically and analytically do this.
I mean, not having the more advanced, measure of lactate threshold and whatever, like having done this for probably not quite as long as you have, or at least not like quite as religiously. It's not, you are still, I get so irate looking at my Whoop.
You could have just ended. I get
I
so
know.
irate.
I get so
irate,
irritated
period.
looking at my Whoop when it's like, because it struggles to, like any wrist-based heart rate monitor is going to struggle, especially when you're moving your arms a lot. So when you're skiing and it's like your heart rate goes from like 42 to like 700, it's like, where am I?
Yeah.
Don't get overly, it's kind of funny. We were saying like, pay attention to your heart rate, not your pace. If your heart rate, if you don't have a heart rate monitor, you can,
They're cheap.
you have fingers and you can count and look at a timer and figure out,
That's what some you would say.
roughly what your heart rate is just manually. Or 2, like you can have a sentence by sentence conversation with somebody. That's the kind of pace we're talking about. It's like, yeah, I could talk to Sherb. I don't particularly want to, not
Never.
because of the conversation,
Never.
because I'm like a little bit tired, but I can probably carry on a conversation. If it's really difficult, then you're probably going too fast. If you could have a full blown,
It should be annoying to have a conversation.
yeah, it should be like,
like a
fuck,
sentence,
like
yeah.
kind of leave me alone. So and if you're pretty close, like I've found, you're still going to get the benefit. That's not licensed to go faster because you're not happy with your pace, but I'm just giving you kind of the, doesn't have to be exactly precise to still get the benefit that we're talking about if you're struggling with like either the heart rate monitor or the, whatever it is.
If you are a serious athlete, www.amazon.com, type in Bluetooth heart rate monitor, get the chest strap.
Yeah, the chest strap.
And the chest strap will link to your machines automatically. Put that bad boy on. Sometimes you need a little bit of sweat or spit, or you can be a hardo and buy the gel that you put on yourself that they do like in the hospital. It's, I don't know, it's getting electrical
ultrasound
gel or something. Yeah,
The
basically.
ultrasound gel.
Yeah. I am a hardo and I do own that. It looks like a caulking tube. It's really weird. You're like in the garage, like squirting.
Your lanolin work, Hunter?
God damn it. I probably would.
That's sort of that last piece. It's worth it if you're serious about what you're doing to make sure that you're actually getting that, because I do have an athlete who wears a smartwatch, heart rate strap, and a Whoop, and they're all different. And one of them measures your heart from like where your heart is. And it's the only thing that it's supposed to do, and the technology has gotten pretty fucking
That's
good.
me. I stare at my Whoop and my Apple Watch, and I'm like, you
I
two
see
are
him counting
idiots.
on his fingers too.
and then I'm like checking my pulse, and I'm like, I don't even know if I'm alive right now.
All right, we've covered a lot in this podcast. We talked about camp. We talked about phase 4. We did a bit of a deep dive into the Mafitone Method. Normally, when we do a long podcast, I wonder what we could cut out. I don't think there was anything. I think a lot of this stuff is super important. It could have been 2 podcasts, but it's really important stuff. We've got more for you guys that we're gonna put out there in terms of content when it comes to absolutely everything that we've talked about here. If you're more of a visual learner, monkey see, monkey do type of situation, like a lot of us are. But phase 4 is here, sort of this final frontier going into like, this is the last 7-week section that we get that is uninterrupted. This is exactly what we're working on, and nothing's going to fuck with me and my mindset and all that good stuff.
Yep.
So
yeah, beyond that, we'll be kind of groups within the community will be diverging a little bit based on where you finish out in the open and quarterfinals. So definitely the last full 7-week chunk of continuity.
Final thoughts, Sherb?
Yeah, I was just saying, we get just about under 60 days left by the time this airs to get better.
Under 60 or 160?
Just under 60 days by the time this airs. So, don't think that it's too far gone or it's too late in the season to make change. Yes, you might be able to take your pace from a 201 to a 131 on the rower, but guess what? You can still make noticeable change in your energy systems, how you move, and your mindset moving forward. So if you haven't jumped on yet, it's a great time to jump on just before the start of the 2022 season.
You can come do it with us at misfit.camp.
Know what I'm saying? Misfit.camp. Make sure you get here on the 11th. We will tell you how to sign up for 22.3 at Misfit Gym Portland, the Misfit Mecca, the HQ, the place with the purple walls and the coolest members and coaches and all that good stuff. You get to hang out with them, interact with them, and then you get a 2-day immersive course on how to absolutely fucking dominate quarterfinals at Misfit HQ with us.
Like a ballin' ass time.
Know what I'm saying?
Wait.
And I'll be there.
Did we do it? Is it over?
And I'll be there.
No, I'll be there. If it wasn't enticing enough,
Now
come
it's
hang out
sold.
with
Sign me up, misfit.camp.
my jolly soul. Misfit.
All right, ladies and gents, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Misfit Podcast. Thank you to our show sponsors, PureSpectrumCBD.com. Use the code word Misfit, ProperFuel.co. Use the code word Misfit to save on your very first order. Best pre and post workout nutrition in the game, 100% backed by science. SharpenTheAxeCo.com. Use the code word Keala, Keala, to save. You might want to show up at Wadapalooza if you want the dopest shit ever.
Got a lot of swag.
We got a lot of swag. We got a
The
lot.
The warehouse is full right now. It's very full.
It's very full. And you can head to MisfitAthletics.com or the SugarWOD Marketplace for your individual programming needs, TeamMisfit.com for your affiliate programming needs. As always, I am at Misfit Coach on Instagram. Slide into those DMs. Let me know what you thought of this episode and what you'd like to hear next.